The Lemp Mansion in St. Louis, Missouri, is often introduced as one of America's most haunted houses. But before the ghost stories, there was something far more powerful. Beer, industrial wealth, and one of the richest family empires in 19th century America. This mansion became the residence of the Lemp family, owners of a brewing company that once dominated St. Louis before Prohibition. At their peak, the Lemps represented wealth comparable to America's greatest industrial families. Yet over decades, the family suffered repeated tragedies, business collapse, and such public fascination that their home transformed into legend. This is the Lemp Mansion, where industrial success met heartbreaking decline and historical fact became forever intertwined with myth. The story begins with Johann Adam Lemp, a German immigrant who arrived in St. Louis in the late 1830s. He initially operated a small grocery business, but he quickly recognized the growing demand for authentic German-style lager beer. In 1840, he made a bold shift toward brewing, and the timing mattered. German immigration to America was surging, bringing with it strong cultural preferences, including a love for crisp lager beer, which was quite different from the common English ales of the time. The brewery expanded rapidly. Beneath the city of St. Louis lay vast natural cave systems which provided perfect cool temperatures for storage, long before modern refrigeration even existed. This gave local brewers a massive advantage. By the late 19th century, the Lemp brewing operation had transformed into a true industrial powerhouse. William J. Lemp took the reins and expanded production dramatically. The company pioneered refrigeration technology and refrigerated rail distribution, allowing their beer to reach markets across the entire nation. The family accumulated enormous wealth. The Lemp name became synonymous with elite status and success in St. Louis high society. The mansion itself originated in the 1860s and later evolved into an elaborate Victorian residence, serving also as an auxiliary office for the brewery. This house reportedly contained exotic plant areas, art vaults, imported architectural features, early heating systems, glass shower installations, unusual for that era, and underground connections linked directly to the brewery operations. But the mansion reflected far more than just wealth. It stood as a symbol of permanence, a dynasty that expected to endure for generations. By the late 1800s, the family behind the Lemp Mansion controlled one of the most successful brewing businesses in America. Beer was not a niche industry. It was a massive commercial force, tied to urban growth, immigration patterns, transportation networks, and ever-changing consumer habits. Under William J. Lemp, the brewery expanded into one of the largest operations in the entire United States. At its height, annual production reportedly reached hundreds of thousands of barrels. The family accumulated such wealth that they rose into the elite circles of St. Louis society. Their mansion proudly reflected that status. Private entertainment spaces, luxury interiors, imported furnishings, and access to resources that most Americans of that period could only dream of. To the outside world, industrial fortunes in the late 19th century often appeared permanent. History would prove otherwise. In 1901, Frederick Lemp, William's favorite son and the expected successor, died unexpectedly. Historical records attribute his death to health complications. His loss struck William J. Lemp deeply. For families built around inheritance and succession, the death of an heir could create instability that reached far beyond personal grief. Business empires often depended on continuity. When that continuity breaks, uncertainty follows. 3 years later, in 1904, William J. Lemp died by suicide inside the mansion. Historical documentation confirms the death. Speculation about his motivations still exists, but historians often point toward overwhelming grief after losing his son, combined with declining health. No single explanation can fully establish intent. This event became one of the foundations for later paranormal stories. But historically, the documented fact is tragedy, not haunting. The early 20th century brought enormous shifts. Public attitudes toward alcohol were changing rapidly. Temperance movements gained powerful political influence, and pressure grew nationwide against breweries. Families whose entire fortunes depended on alcohol production now faced increasing uncertainty. The Lemp Empire had survived fierce competition. It had survived massive industrial transformation. But the next challenge would prove much harder: federal law. In 1920, Prohibition began in the United States, through the 18th Amendment and accompanying legislation. For brewing families like the Lemps, this was not merely a downturn. It was an existential threat. Companies desperately attempted alternatives: soft drinks, other commercial products, diversification. Many failed. The Lemp brewing operation struggled to adapt. Eventually, the family was forced to sell the brewery at a fraction of its earlier value. Generational wealth that once seemed untouchable began disappearing. The decline was not just financial, it was also deeply psychological. Industrial dynasties often define themselves through success. When the enterprise collapses, identity can collapse with it. Historical records document additional suicides among members of the Lemp family across later decades. These deaths contributed heavily to the public narrative surrounding the mansion. However, an important distinction must be made. Documented deaths equal historical fact. Claims of supernatural causes remain unproven interpretation. These two categories are often blurred in popular retellings. The tragedies themselves require no exaggeration. Repeated loss across generations was already extraordinary. By the mid-20th century, the former family residence had become strongly associated with ghost stories. Visitors, employees, and later paranormal investigators reported experiences including unexplained sounds, sensations of being watched, claims of apparitions, and unusual events attributed to former family members. These accounts contributed greatly to the mansion's public identity. However, important distinctions must be made. Paranormal experiences connected to specific Lemp family members remain anecdotal. Multiple family tragedies did occur. The mansion later became known nationally for alleged hauntings. These statements are not the same. Historical documentation confirms the deaths. It does not confirm supernatural explanations. Separating grief, memory, folklore, and evidence is essential. Over time, the Lemp family's tragic history became almost inseparable from the growing commercial fascination surrounding haunted locations. Legend claim: the mansion is among America's most haunted houses. Historical record: there is no scientific consensus proving any paranormal activity. Its reputation developed through reported experiences, media coverage, local folklore, and tourism. Specific rooms are permanently haunted by individual family members. No verifiable historical evidence establishes supernatural occupancy. These stories remain part of popular culture rather than documented history. Repeated tragedies prove a curse. Economic collapse, grief, illness, social pressures, and complex family circumstances provide historically grounded explanations without invoking supernatural causes. Following the family's decline, ownership of the mansion changed hands. The property eventually evolved into a commercial venue, complete with hospitality and dining operations. Today, its modern identity is a unique blend of historic preservation, tourism, architecture, local history, and paranormal branding. This transformation raises a broader question. When historic estates become public attractions, how much emphasis should be placed on history and how much on legend? Historic mansions often survive only through adaptation. Without commercial use, many simply disappear. Maintenance costs are immense. Preservation demands significant funding. As a result, historical sites frequently struggle to balance authenticity, public interest, entertainment, and economic survival. The story of the Lemp Mansion therefore extends far beyond one family. It reflects something deeper: how societies choose to remember wealth, tragedy, and decline. The history of the Lemp Mansion is often reduced to a single word: haunted. But the documented record suggests something far more complex. An immigrant success story, industrial expansion, generational wealth, personal laws, changing laws, economic collapse, and the transformation of tragedy into legend. Whether remembered as a brewery dynasty, a historic estate, or a source of folklore, the mansion remains powerful evidence of one simple truth. Even the most powerful families can discover how quickly permanence disappears.